These are dark times, and the studio we once knew is no more. The medium I love is no more. Yeah, I know what you mean. It looks like Pixar has made its next move. And it's for this very reason I've returned. To bring it back from the dead. Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy TheGamingTrouge here, and ladies and gentlemen, we're finally doing something different. This is my personal thoughts of the history of Pixar and what my history is with this entire studio. Most people think it's probably impossible to do an entire retrospective of someone's life when it comes to a studio that they've never even stepped foot in before, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. Pixar's been a part of my life for many years at this point, and I'm going to make it my job today for you guys to explain my love and hatred for this company right now. Because as much as I love a lot of the films and a lot of the business practices, unfortunately, we are now in the dark age of Pixar.
Today we're talking about one of my favorite movie studios, or at least one that I would have called my favorite at one time. But unfortunately, time has not been kind to this specific studio.
Pixar stinks, everything is on fire, they're losing millions of dollars. The only way they innovated was with realism, and realism doesn't matter in animation.
From the moment they burst onto the scene with Toy Story in 1995, Pixar seemed to have the magic formula. Jump to today though, and things are looking a lot less rosy.
Toy Story 4 is a colossal failure from almost every aspect of storytelling. The plot is less cohesive than Swiss cheese, the characters are all shells of their former self. The consistency of the cause and effect is equivalent to that of a game of Bunko, where characters either get insanely lucky or insanely unlucky depending on whatever the plot requires.
I don't think Pixar is ever going to make a film as disastrously bad as Cars 2 ever again, but I doubt we're ever going to get the consistency of old Pixar back.
I knew it deep in my heart of hearts in 2018 when I watched Incredibles 2 that something feels very off about the company and studio that I've grown to love. Because I had a long history with Pixar, and it goes beyond just enjoying the films as a youth. Let's just go back to the beginning.
From magical movies to unforgettable adventures.
Oh, dang it, I thought I got rid of all the trauma. Let's start at the beginning. At this point, I'm probably around 4 years old, and when you're a child, you really don't know what good movies or what great media is. It kind of takes a while for you to realize like what your own personal interests are and what you do enjoy. But I remember one of my first hyperfixations were on many Pixar films. Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Monsters, Inc. were some of my earliest hyperfixations that I can honestly remember. Not only were these movies hilarious, not only as a kid, but even now as an adult, but even so, these stories have such good characters and writing and themes that can go a long way, on top of it just being an overall fantastic experience. Be it Flick being an ultimate underdog, Buzz and Woody reconciling and realizing that there's more than life than just being a toy, to even the prospect of found family within Monsters Inc. These stories connect with me on a personal level. Even as a kid, I can feel that these characters are real and they're not just some type of like kids show. And while I did watch a lot of cartoons, some of them being actual kids cartoons, I still hold that these movies are some of my favorite movies I've ever watched in my entire life. However, I wasn't completely out of the woods just yet. There was one ghost, one ghoul that took me a decade of my existence on this earth for me to get over. And that came within the VHS tape of A Bug's Life. Because Pixar used to do these things, well, right before the film in theaters, they would show a short film to kind of bring in people and see what this type of new 3D animation is all about. But, unfortunately for me, one of my biggest fears was right there. A man playing chess. You're laughing. I tell you my biggest fear, and you're laughing at me. Well, last time for me telling you guys my deepest, darkest secrets. I will tell ya, I don't know what set off in my brain that this guy was on the same level as Michael Myers, but this guy was creepy to me as a kid. He just looked like that he was about to end my entire existence. Like, look at that face, and you don't tell me that he looks like a serial killer. It was for this reason why I actually didn't like Toy Story 2 as much as Toy Story 1 as a kid, was because that guy was in the same film. I thought you would belong in something else. What are you doing here? Get him out of here! Gah! Wait, I just thought of something. Did Al just kill him?
Too much, he's not gonna last. It's amazing.
The unsung hero that we didn't know we need, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, Pixar has been firing gold in all cylinders. This was the golden era. This was the beginner era, where we got to see a lot of creativity flow through and see some of the most beloved characters in animation get their starting. Like, right afterwards, we got films like Incredibles and Wall-E and Up, and films that just captured my imagination unlike anything ever did. And beyond just being films that are just good for the family and that we can all watch together, but on top of that, it can touch us in many different ways. You can tell the vision, the heart, the passion, and the soul that they've had with a lot of their early films, and even films into the 2010s era. Don't take my word for it. You can literally ask anyone about a Pixar memory and they will tell you.
My favorite is from Finding Nemo, and it's the birds that go mine.
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 Would you just shut up?
You're rats with wings.
Bit of a tough question since I've seen almost every one of them. I'm gonna have to go with Coco on this one.
Coco, that is a very interesting pick. Because like when most people talk about the favorite Pixar movies, most people will pick like Toy Story or Monsters Inc. or The Incredibles. It's really
I mean, like Toy Story 2 was like around my top 5. So
the first movie my dad actually took me to in a movie theater.
Oh.
That was Toy Story.
Oh, Toy Story. That's a good pick. The first one still holds up.
Yeah. It was in theaters and stuff. He took me when I was little.
Oh,
all that. Also, the funny moment on this one would be the film kind of broke in the middle of the showing of it.
Oh no!
I didn't get to see the ending.
Oh no!
When I first saw it. I got to see it later on.
That's insane. I never had a movie broke on me in the theater before.
You're asking the hard-hitting questions already. I mean, towards the end of Toy Story 1, where Woody and Buzz are flying on the firework is pretty iconic, so that's definitely up there as one of them. I think like the part in like Monsters Inc. where they're like riding on like all the doors too. I don't know why, it just looked like really cool, you know?
Yeah.
Just like the way that it was like animated. It honestly looks really fun. Like I kind of want to like try it if they ever make like a ride like that at like Disney or something.
You just hold on to a door and you're just like, ah!
Yeah, I don't know how they would do it, but if they can somehow find a way to do it, then I'm getting fast pass for that.
Hands down, I think I'm gonna be honest. The only one I could ever think of, Cars. One, it's about the racing spirit, you know? Honestly, I think I could give Cars credit for getting that racing spirit in me.
I always thought the scene in Up where he just starts flying in the balloons for the first time was neat.
What is your favorite character?
After thinking about it, I'm gonna have to go with Wall-E.
Ooh, Wall-E.
He's just a bean.
Yeah, he's just a little dude that like gets dragged into this huge adventure.
In Monster Inc.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mike.
Mike Wazowski. That's
Yeah.
a good pick. That's a good pick.
Sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing his last name.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, man. Well, both Sully and Mike were pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they're both up there.
For me, honestly, I'm gonna say Doc Hudson.
Doc Hudson.
Not only, well, he's an old man, but or old car in this case, but he had a history with racing, especially with the Piston Cup. So he pretty much ended up in a situation the king almost ended up in. It was almost pretty much the same thing. That was because when McQueen saw that, he was immediately reminded of what he saw in Doc Hudson's garage.
Yeah. What is your favorite Pixar movie?
Well, I definitely watched Monsters, Inc. a lot when I was a kid, so I think that's definitely up there.
Had to be Incredibles.
Oh, Incredibles. Okay.
I don't know. I'm not really into superhero movies and stuff, but that one really was good.
But it goes beyond just the thematic messaging of the movies. These types of movies made me who I am today when it comes to filmmaking in general. As much as I'm praising Pixar, there was one man behind Pixar that I saw in every behind the scenes, every bonus feature, everything that has to do with Pixar. I've seen this man, and his name is John Lasseter. John Lasseter had a heart, a soul of animation that goes beyond just what other people at Disney wanted. And the history of John Lasseter could be an entire video on its own. But I'm saying all of this to say that he was my hero. I looked up to this individual and I wanted to be him when I grew up. Maybe not with movies, but maybe with video games, or heck, this YouTube thing seems pretty cool. In 2010, I saw a peek behind the scenes more than I could ever ask for with the 2-hour documentary, A Pixar Story. This is my favorite documentary ever, explaining the history of Pixar, its ups and downs, getting heckin' Steve Jobs to even vouch for Pixar to even start as a company to even begin with. I highly recommend giving this documentary a full watch if you haven't already. It's streaming on stuff like Disney+. This isn't a review of the Pixar story in its entirety, but to understand where I'm coming from, you gotta understand that this documentary fully solidified Pixar as a titan of my life. Among all my favorite hobbies, watching and researching Pixar movies was number 3 on my list, next to researching stuff from Nintendo and later Sega. And if it wasn't for Pixar, I wouldn't be here talking about my favorite franchises with you. It left that big of an impact on me, and the people behind Pixar left a legacy that is worth celebrating. In 2006, Disney buys Pixar for $7.4 billion. That's almost as much as Xbox buying Activision Blizzard. I wonder which one was the better outcome. Most people get confused that when Disney bought Pixar, all of Pixar's films just went down the rabbit hole, but in actuality, it did not actually tank. Some of the biggest films actually came out after the buyout. Films like WALL-E, Cars, Ratatouille, and Up all came after the whole buyout. John Lasseter would ping-pong between working on projects with Disney, as well as working on projects with Pixar. This was largely due to the fact that Pixar was making banner 3D films, and while Disney had some good films under their belt when they transitioned to 3D, it wasn't a smooth transition, and some people hate some of their early 3D films. But then we appear in the 2010s era, and the creativity that originally was in Pixar started to kinda wane a little bit. We got a lot of sequels and prequels to movies that didn't necessarily need it, but to be fair, some of them knocked it out of the park. Monsters University is a great allegory for people with autism. The hilarious, badly made Cars 2, well, yes, it's not really a good film per se, it's a film that I could put on and laugh and have a great time with, and the third movie ended it on a high note. Now, don't get me wrong, they were making original stories. Films like Brave, Inside Out, Coco were all great ideas and showed that Pixar still had the same flair that they did in the 2000s. But you also got films like The Good Dinosaur that really was basically a tech demo just so Pixar can flex their muscles and show you how big and great technology is, while the story was as deep as a puddle. Man, The Good Dinosaur put me right to sleep. Ugh. But we now come to a pivotal moment in Pixar history. After a decade of asking and pleading, we finally got a sequel to one of Pixar's greatest films ever made. The Incredibles is one of Pixar's greatest movies, and doing research for this video made me realize that Incredibles was way more than just your typical superhero film. It deconstructed the superhero genre while also at the same time tackling a very grounded human story, not to mention the passion and dedication that director Brad Bird brought to the table, bringing experiences from his own life and putting it into this family of superheroes.
Do it, man, because this is going to be so awesome if we get it right.
So much heart and soul went into this project, and when it was announced in 2014 that Pixar was wanting to do a sequel to Incredibles with the legendary director himself back at the helm, this was going to be a masterpiece. And I saw it a couple weeks after it came out when it was available to rent, and honestly, I fell in love with the second one. I thought it was a really good follow-up to what came before it. Not knowing what I know now, I honestly thought that this was one of Pixar's greatest sequels at the time. But using my own superpower of hindsight, I realized that this is not the superhero movie that I thought it was back in 2018. For starters, it's basically just a role reverse of the first movie and nothing more. The plot is almost kind of similar to the first one, but without the charm and heart behind it, and the villain is a big slap in the face to the villain of the first movie. But to wrap up the decade, we have one last movie to just end it all, and we're going back to 2010 with a sequel to Toy Story 3, that being Toy Story 4. I gotta be honest, at this point in time, I wasn't even as hyperfixated with Pixar as I was when I was a kid and teenager. But let me tell you, whenever I first saw this trailer, I knew it wasn't going to be as good as something like Toy Story 3, but I came in there expecting a good movie. And at the end, this ending clip, well, Woody decides to leave everybody and be with his kid, left me absolutely speechless. I didn't know how to process this because this goes against his character. This goes against the entire stories of Toy Story. And not a lot of people seem to necessarily care about it, and maybe I personally thought I was in the wrong when I had this train of thought. And I wanted to have this opinion about a Pixar movie that has made a bunch of money, won tons of awards. I didn't know what to think. What really didn't help things was that Kingdom Hearts 3 came out this year to critical and commercial acclaim, and it got Toy Story better than what the new movie did. These characters actually felt like characters, and they felt like the characters that I grew up since I was a child. There is, however, a deeper story behind Pixar during the times of Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4, but in all honesty, I didn't know anything of that at this point in time. At this point in time, I saw this movie with no real knowledge of behind the scenes stuff, and it just left me feeling weird. Four numbers spell out the year of the beast, 2020. Yeah, everyone already kind of knows this year was just a mess for all forms of media, video games and movies alike. Looking back in the last 4 years in retrospect, it wasn't necessarily a bad year for media, but it was a weird year. With all the stay-at-home protocols, they actually had a plan to keep doing films through the means of Disney+. And Disney Plus actually had a lot of bangers, to be completely honest, and it still has shows that I generally like on there. But now we're going back to Pixar, and at this point in time, there were 2 films that honestly made my year when it came to Pixar films. The first being Onward. I love the setting of Onward, I love the characters, the story was really unique at the time, and it feels like an actual original that Pixar was actually striving to make. Same with Soul. This film, honestly, at this point in time, made me super excited to see what Pixar can cook up next. Because, without sounding repetitive, this has the most soul out of any modern day Pixar film. Now, at this time in 2021, I have moved way past my initial thoughts when it came to Pixar. Pixar is not number 1 anymore, but they're still up there. I still like a lot of the films, but most of the time I was really delving deeper into more anime and other forms of media. What's kind of funny is that this was the year I got into Studio Ghibli films, which Studio Ghibli, Pixar, and Disney all have had connections with throughout the 2000s. It didn't help that the next Pixar film would be a film that honestly just put me to sleep. Not as bad as The Good Dinosaur, but just a film that's just whatever to me. Now, to be fair, I don't necessarily despise Luca or anything like that. It's not a bad movie, it's just a movie that's just not for me. It felt very childish, and yeah, I did cry at the end. It wasn't a movie that I necessarily want to put up as one of the greatest when it comes to Pixar's catalog. But we're not quite done with 2021 just yet, as one day when I was scrolling through YouTube, I came across a very interesting video talking about the history of Disney straight-to-DVDs.
On November of 2017, reports have been revealed that John Lasseter had an entire history of sexual misconduct that made Pixar an unsafe environment for the women working there. He took a leave of absence soon after, and it wouldn't be until June of 2018 that John was officially announced to be out, and that Jennifer Lee and Pete Docter would take his place at Walt Disney Animation Studios and Pixar Animation Studios respectively. And right at that moment, the changes were happening.
This was a shocking pill for me to swallow, and it's a pill that I still don't know exactly how to put into words just yet. When you realize your idol or someone you looked up to for many years isn't who they say they are and they're doing some unthinkable things, it kinda does something to you, you know? This was a man that I thought I would be able to meet in real life. And yes, that is a childish mindset to have when it comes to anyone, when it comes to like films or movies. But at that young of age, watching someone like John Lasseter spill his heart out about animation and the passion he had for it was inspiring for many people, myself included. This has been a hard thing for me to even come to terms with because he was there ever since I got hyperfixated on wanting to become like a filmmaker, wanting to become a YouTuber, wanting to like do the things I do nowadays was all thanks to John Lasseter and his inspiration to me at a young age. Now I know that this is old information at this point, but I still hope and pray that those people that were hurt got better jobs and hopefully found a place that they can call their own and hopefully are living a better life now. John was there from the beginning of Pixar until 2018. And to see him leave is a giant pill for me to swallow. And I know how some people may say, well, how could you still be a fan of something when someone that created it was definitely not nice? Well, look, we kind of live in a fallen world. Everyone has different motives. Everyone is not good or evil. There's lines of gray between everything. And I believe that the people that did work on those movies with John Lasseter are not as bad as John Lasseter. But this knowledge now made me rethink with the last couple of sequels and films that weren't at the same standard as Pixar. That probably explains why they weren't really good films in my personal opinion. One of the people that got hit in the crossfire the most was film director Brad Bird, who was working on Incredibles 2 and actually had to rush to get the film done because they actually had to push back Toy Story 4 because of the management change at Pixar. And it's just a theory at this point, but I believe that's the reason why he didn't want to record an audio commentary for Incredibles 2. But at this point in my life, I was definitely mixed when it came to Pixar. This knowledge made me uneasy, and like I said, I still don't know how to properly put into words my feelings finding out this information for the very first time. It was a shell shock unlike anything I've ever felt in my entire life. At this point in time, I became a little cynical when it comes to Pixar films. These films meant so much to me, and now they just kind of feel very samey and only for kids, and it didn't have the same type of vibe as an anime, or just something that could be enjoyed by everybody in the room. And now we made it to 2022, one of the worst years to be a Pixar fan, because we got films like Turning Red, which, in my opinion, Turning Red is actually a really good film. I definitely could see why some people hate it, and I do think it has some kind of charm that, honestly, I was looking for in a Pixar film. But then you have Lightyear, one of the worst films ever made. The movie was built with graham crackers for legs, the characters are just so unlikable or just so nothing that I have nothing to really talk about, and the music wasn't there. Nothing about Lightyear was good. And before you guys say anything, no, this is not the reason I hate the movie. This is the reason why I hate the movie. And this is coming off the fact that Pixar said that they were going to make original movies, and Lightyear, I guess, was an original movie. And when you think about 2022 and all of its movies and adaptations that came out that year, yeah, you know you messed up at the wrong time. You have films like Sonic the Hedgehog 2 making gangbusters. You had Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, one of the biggest comebacks for a company ever made. Now look, I don't look at Pixar, I don't look at Disney, I'm an outsider looking in from the outside, and what I see is just Disney stopped giving a crap. They started putting some of their stuff to Disney Plus as an exclusive, and when their films did go to theaters, they put out the bad ones in the theaters. My hope for Pixar was waning at this point, but I didn't want to be nihilistic. I didn't want to say that they're dying, because that's such a bad mindset to have, saying everything is dying and everything is just dead. You know what this reminds me of? The Nintendo Wii U generation. Similarly to Pixar, I didn't know all the details of what was going on behind the scenes at Nintendo during this time, and when I did find out later down the road, they're very much the same to me. Nintendo started out the Wii U generation by just basically not being able to make a profit, and by the time when the Wii U was starting to get some good games, they kind of cut it short. They didn't know how to actually market or advertise the Wii U, and it just ended up being one of Nintendo's failures. But Nintendo came back with a brand new product, and now everyone loves the Nintendo Switch. Not only that it's actually unique and actually usable anywhere, but on top of that, it has the games that people want to play. I feel like Pixar can have a similar fate. They just need that one film to bring everything together and to bring everyone back into their good graces. But now we made it to 2023, and at this moment I had next to no idea what to think of the next Pixar film. Is it going to be as bad as Lightyear, or maybe it's going to be actually good like Turning Red was? I didn't know what to think.
No matter how deep the darkness, a light shines within.
2023 was an emotional year for me because of a lot of things going on IRL and within the YouTube and Twitch spaces that I started to occupy. But one of the people that I still hold in high regards in both content creation and as a friend is my buddy Noah the Arter, which he actually got his start around this time when it came to content creation. And we started talking about Pixar and our interests with the future of the company, and our viewpoints, while some different than others, we still want Pixar to succeed. We still saw the vision and talent that they had from the 2000s and even some of the 2010s films like Inside Out and the like. But one day when I was scrolling through YouTube Shorts, I found something that was very interesting to say the least. Yeah, I didn't know who that character was. Why the heck is the audience cheering for this Oh my gosh, Pixar, I want to have faith in you. Why do you do this to me? But here is the kicker though. Despite the abysmal marketing that Pixar tried to do with Elemental, I watched the movie via Disney Plus, and I'll be darned, it's one of the best movies within the last 3 years. Now, don't get it twisted, out of every film in 2023, it's not even in my top 5, but what I will say is that this is a really good character-driven film about falling in love with someone that you probably didn't even know you wanted to fall in love with. This film is more about the characters than the overall story, and while the overall story is a little weak, I still think that this is a step in the right direction when it comes to Pixar. This was a very intentional film, and I feel like if the marketing was better, this could have been one of Pixar's greatest films. But now we reach the end of 2023, and I did not have any idea what I was about to experience within the next couple of months.
Hi, my name is Miles Thatcher, and I hate Toy Story 4.
So we started talking, and the conversation went to Toy Story 4 and how it destroyed everything. And when I tell you, the passion in his voice when he was describing how this film is a bad film, I was both laughing my head off and at the same time agreeing, because this was the exact same feelings I had whenever I watched Toy Story 4 back in the summer of 2019. I then tell Miles that he should definitely make a full video talking about this because he seems very passionate about Toy Story, and I will watch that in a heartbeat. But it turns out that he actually got most of his newer information from a video called How Toy Story 4 Destroyed Everything by Gaming Magic 13. I was taken aback at the fact that the video was 6 hours long, and then I realized that he actually had multiple parts that he split up into hour-long segments. But I wouldn't even get around to watching the 6 hours until my first couple of weeks of work, listening to it in the background as I did my job. But oh my gosh, the heart, the passion, and the soul reminded me of some of the best videos I've watched on YouTube back in the day. But he is a media analyst that analyzes a bunch of different media from video games and movies. Given his knowledge of Disney and Pixar, I actually asked him if he wanted to be in an interview today to try to see if there's any sort of hope for any kind of Pixar redemption arc of some kind.
One of the most inspiring things that I can hear that kind of vindicates some of the videos I make is whenever anybody tells me that they found inspiration to make their own stuff, or that I was a part of the inspiration to go full steam ahead with making their own content. That's incredibly humbling to hear from anybody, because there's YouTubers that I looked up to and that I saw doing sort of extensive media breakdowns, and I said, I want to do that. That seems like it's really fun, and I feel vindicated listening to this person vent passionately in one direction or the other, be it positive or negative, and wanting to kind of voice those feelings myself on things that I'm equally as passionate about. So that, to hear that I am that YouTuber for other people is kind of surreal, and it's always really, really nice to hear.
Do you see a point of like full 10 years? We want to say that because we have like the 2000s, the 2010s, and now with the 2020s. Do you see Pixar getting like back to that like golden era of like the 2000s and like maybe like 2000 from like 2010, I want to say, with Toy Story 3.
If you'd asked me before this month, I'd have said absolutely. There's nothing that's preventing them from having another golden era, as it were. I mean, they've certainly. I don't believe it's possible, realistically, for them to have ever had another flawless winning streak. I don't think what happened in the early 2000s was lightning in a bottle. That to ever expect that they'd be able to live up to that would be foolish. But if they kept lifting up the voices of younger artists within the studio who had really, really personal stories to tell, because that was what was happening for a while with Luca and Turning Red. They had fresh young talent who were getting their chance to step into the directorial position and make their own movies. And if they kept lifting up those kinds of voices and allowing them to share their vision with the world, and getting back to making the types of movies that defined what the studio was all about instead of just farting out sequels and spin-offs constantly, then yeah, they absolutely could have gotten back on top of the world, and maybe they still will. Maybe after the dust settles, because I don't think anybody reacted positively to the news that they wanted to shift away from original stories or shift away from autobiographical, whatever that term was, and focus more on spin-offs. I don't think I read a single message from anyone anywhere that said, like, yeah, good for you, Pixar, that's exactly what we want. I'm so happy that you've made this switch in your creative priorities. No one said that. Nobody on this earth said that. Or if they did, they were a very small minority, and they got like 2 likes on Twitter. Sorry, X. Whatever. Never calling it that, such a stupid name.
They killed the board.
Maybe, here's a conspiracy theory for you. Maybe Pete Docter said that, like, because he was aware of what was happening behind the scenes and, like, where the executives were trying to push them creatively. So he said that publicly to be like, hey, this is me telling you without telling you that, like, things are really crap right now. Can you make some noise so that I have verifiable receipts to go bring to the executives and slam down on the table and be like, hey, idiots, are you aware that you're like killing us by saying, like, encouraging us to make these types of movies? Hopefully what happened is that, like, the executives woke up, and because what I've learned recently is that executives are horrifically out of touch with just reality, and sometimes they won't even realize the success of one of their IPs until it's almost over. Like, they'll cancel a show having no idea how popular it is, and then as the finale of that show is approaching, they'll be like, oh, it's actually more popular than I thought. Oops. Wow.
Can you be referring to a certain
yes.
owl lady and the adorable king of demons?
Yes.
I'm typically the one that starts spewing out hope, and I'm always optimistic, but even I, a self-known optimist that basically goes and tries to tell people that there's always going to be a good ending, is there a good ending for Pixar? Look, every company has its ups and downs, and just because a company has its downs at some point doesn't mean it can't get back up. We've seen through different types of movies and medias that when the chips are down, you can stand back up and face your fears. And through the 20 plus years that Pixar has been a company, I don't doubt that they can make banger films. It's not just the one person that makes films, it's the groups and tons of people that make these films what they are. It's people that know that art challenges technology and technology inspires art.
Look, over in that house is a kid who thinks you are the greatest, and it's not because you're a space ranger, pal. It's because you're a toy. You are his toy.
That's why I'm still a Pixar fan to this very day. Pixar means a lot to everybody that I've talked to. Whether they know it or they don't, everyone has had at least one Pixar experience, and that has to mean something, I've been making content on here since 2012, and in that time I've watched many movies, be it good, bad, or ugly. Same thing with video games. I've played so many terrible video games, you guys know this, but I always felt with every bad game, there's always going to be a good game next to it. Same can be said with movies, and Pixar is the prime example of what a company can do when they have heart, talent, and creative people working on their projects. And who knows what the future is going to hold with Pixar, but I know one thing's for sure. I will forever be there, day one, watching their newest products. So, what's next for Pixar?
Hello! Ah! I'm Anxiety.
A movie about me. Sounds about right. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you're interested in any of the people that you see in this video, I'll have them all linked down below so you guys can go check them out. And a special thanks to Gaming Magic 13 for the interview. We'll have our interview linked down below if you guys want to listen to the full interview. Special thanks to KattChatt for being a member of the Kingdom Keepers. If you want to support the Gaming Trouge, follow my links down below.